Hello, faithful followers. It's Steve again from Fair Mighty Farms. Firstly, to apologize for our short absence. As everybody knows, even if you don't know, life happens, and we had to kind of deal with a few things that had to be dealt with here and there and everywhere around us. And there's going to be more things to deal with as per normal. Now, straight off into running back into cooking and canning, we have had a very, very interesting summer. May was cold and wet here in southern Quebec, northern New England. Um, After that, it just got hot in June, July. We are at the very end of August now. And it's just been hot, and dry through the whole summer. I think we might have, here anyways, the measurable amount of rain we had was 1.5 inches, about 3.5 centimeters, 4 centimeters of rain all summer. So we've been doing our best to be diligent with the water because we don't want our wells to dry out either. So it hasn't been the most fruitful year for the garden. But we've still managed to produce an awful lot of produce. So without further ado, we will be jumping into pickles. We do have a bunch of cucumbers, pickling cucumbers as such. And we will be putting them into jars and turning them into yummy dill pickles. What we're doing today, though, is going to be something of, I guess you could say, that popular phrase of cowboy canning, because it's not a tested, measured recipe. However, it comes from a family member that has been using it since her mother was doing it, and since her mother has been doing it. So I've been eating these stylings of dill pickles my entire life. It's easy, it's good, and you can do it or not. Nobody's gotten botulism from it yet. We've tested the brine, so like with litmus paper, so we know that the pH is more than where it's supposed to be. We also do this in, they say not you're not supposed to, the USDA, the good people at the USDA and any other learning facility, they say you're not supposed to put anything else into the 2-liter half-gallon jars unless it's juice or unless it's dry stuff. Okay. However, we wind up with these bastard sized jars, and they're more than a quart. They're less than half a gallon, so they're more than a liter, but they're less than 2. They're that in between stage, and the only thing that we will use these for is dry stuff and or the dillied pickles or beans or what have you. The general consensus in all of the literature that you can find is 10 to 15 minutes for almost any dillied kind of product, or yes, pickled product as such in the water bath canner. So I'll get busy with the process. I've got the recipe right here, and there's no specific measure except for the brine. Otherwise, it's all of the spices that you want to put in all by your lonesome. Uh, Dill, bay leaves, pepper, whatever. It doesn't matter. The principle is the brine that's going to preserve these things, and the water bathing time. The brine is a very simple brine. 3 parts water, 1 part vinegar. And for each amount like that, you can scale it up or down, is a heaping tablespoon of salt. I started already. I've got my brine heating up on the stove. The first step, though, is to put all of the pickles, all of the cucumbers, into jars, and not to blanch them, but it's just going to be to scald them directly in the pot, let them sit and set for 5 minutes, and then dump the water out, and then put the garlic and your spices or whatever else you want in there with these things. And that's that. It's really simple. We'll go through it real quick. Alrighty, so step one is to take the little cucumbers in question and stuff them into the jars. Again, it's not any kind of real rocket science. It's just one of those things that has to be done. They've got to be placed in as hopefully evenly as possible and as nicely as possible. Sometimes you can get more or less than others. And of course, this guy's going to give me a hard time. And you can come back, and even if I know here we've got some bigger guys that we're not just going to stuff one pickle, one cucumber in a jar. That's kind of silly. So what we'll wind up doing with these guys is making quarters or spears or whatever you want to call them. But first, it's to get all of these guys jammed in just as best as you can. You can stand them up at first. As such, they're very showy like that. And you don't have to be afraid. You can jam them in just as much as hard as you want so they take up the most room possible. And then some of the guys that are on top, don't forget that they're kind of tough and stiff right now, but they will soften up a little bit, so you can still use a fork to dig them out of your jar. That's not really something to worry about, you know. And we're going to be realistic about it too. Like I'm not going to force it, so it's, you know, I need to get the chisel hammer to get them out when it comes time. But ultimately, that's it. There's lots of headspace, you know, and that's with the headspace we go up to that 1 inch mark there, to the just above the shoulder, to the first little rim thing here on the jar. All right, that's that simple. Step one. So I will continue on off camera doing step one, because not everybody wants to see somebody stuff a cucumber in a jar. All right, I'll be right back once this is done, and then we'll go to the next step, which is the scalding stage. Okay. All right. So I wound up being able to fill up with our smaller ones 7 jars, and as you can see, they're in there nice and tight. They're not going anywhere. All right. So with that in mind, if you have the largemouth jars, this job goes an awful lot easier, the putting them in and the taking them out. They are all cleaned, like we washed all the jars beforehand too, and that kind of helps facilitate them sliding in really easy, because like they were still just a little bit, I guess there was still some water vapor on the jar, so it kind of helps them slide in there. So the whole pickles, the large size jars, mouth jars, are an awful lot easier. As for the ones that you're going to slice up or quarter or whatever, the small mouth jars, it's going to make the job again an awful. It actually doesn't really make a difference. You know, you can see very clearly. You know, so anyways, I'm going to start slicing up those other guys. And of course, I'm going to try to save the largemouth ones if possible, because we don't know what projects there are in the future. And again, this is another one of those things that's like really super easy to do. It doesn't take an exact science here. You just have to cut them into quarters or spears or whatever you want. Okay. And again, the jars get filled up super easy, super quick. Everybody in. You can lie them down. There, everybody squishes in. Lie the jar on the side actually too, and that makes things an awful lot easier. Right? It's kind of like trying to put your kindling into a plastic bucket or a metal bucket. You can't really do it so well when it's standing up, but when it's lying down, it is easier. Now, of course, the smart thing to do here, of course, would be to cut a whole bunch and do it all, but just for the sake of doing it, this is how I'm going to do it. I just cut lengthwise once one way, and then back the other, like so. We pick up our jar, and that's 2 decent sized cucumbers that are in there, and just in, and then once you start getting a hard time about it, it's easier to put in these little slivers. Okay, again, like as far as flavor goes, it doesn't really make a big difference. I mean, you can take a whole pickled cucumber and just slice it up on your plate, but this is, variety is the spice of life, right? See, I'm already starting to meet some resistance. So there, these guys are just going to get shoved in with delicately with force. And everybody in there, and they're not going to complain. And even so, if you wind up with all that extra head space at the top that you don't feel, or you don't want to stuff more stuff in there, you can cut the quarters into eighths, but the other way. Or again, you can slice them as thin as you want. I'm sure if you really wanted to, you could julienne the things into there. But what's important to remember is that we have to save, like we can't jam pack the jars too full. Like for me, I'm going to put, I'll stuff in a little bit more into here. There's still some room, but we have to save room for our garlics and other spices and flavorings that we want to put in there. Again, the spices and the flavorings, it's all up to you. Like the garlic, you can put just like 1 clove, or you can even boil it right in your brine, so you get that garlicky taste. It's the same thing for all of your other flavorings, but for that full, wonderful punch in the mouth, we put an awful lot of garlic, probably 3-4 cloves. We'll say 4, because when we open up a jar, it's always a fight between the little humans and the big humans who gets that lump of garlic in the pot. So we put 4, so that way there's no fighting. And then it's all of the peppercorns and or the bay leaves and or mustard or whatever. Like we flavor ours with heart. So when we eat these pickles, we know what we're tasting. It's not, oh, look, there's a hint of what. No. We do it properly. We use an awful lot of spices in ours. So I'm going to get busy filling up the rest of these jars off camera, and that's ultimately what it's going to look like. When they're sliced into these little quarters, and that, they do come out of the jar an awful lot easier too with a fork. So that's why we opt to use the small mouth. All right. So I will get busy with that, and I will come back for the next step. All right. So while I was chopping up these cucumbers and stuffing them into jars, I did have my large pot, my 3-head boiling pot, out heating up a whole bunch of water so that we can scald these things. All right. And again, I brought it in, I placed it there. This can be a delicate operation, so do be careful just the same. All we have to do with this, I have my funnel that's just water, but it's just that way I can be a little less careless. All we have to do is cover the cucumbers, so they're just covered, and then we'll only start timing it when there's around I'm at my last jar, but they need 5 minutes of scalding. All right, and it's neat to see. I guess this is instead of doing the blanching side of it. You can see they changed their color. And this is easier to use a measuring cup for this, because It's not really any kind of accurate measurement to what we're doing. We're just putting water on cucumbers. Granted, really hot water. Yeah. And it's funny is that I have friends that'll say, well, they're good, they're good, they're good, they're good. You can use that pickle crisp stuff and whatever, but for whatever reason, we just do it the old-fashioned way again, following, as to what your grandmother, great grandmother, or your aunt would always say. Just throw in a bay leaf. There's something in the tannins in the bay leaves that do help. I mean, they're not like biting into a giant fresh piece of celery there. It's not going to crunch and crackle there, but they're still, they're not soggy cucumbers. Anyways, so this is, again, a really easy thing. You can do this, again, to scale up or scale down. We've done it where we've only done like 2 or 3 jars at a time, knowing that it was either a really poor year for cucumbers, or for whatever reason, we knew that there was only a very limited quantity of, so you can do it just as your cucumbers are ready, rather than trying to save up a whole bunch to do it. Or you can put them all in the fridge and wait until you can get a whole bunch done. Either way. And again, it's one of these things that, if you don't eat them all this year, it doesn't matter. They'll be good for a year, 2 years. Not just that, it's to do more now. Even we were at the grocery store the other day, just yesterday, and the friggin' price of pickles, dill pickles, everything it's going stupid crazy nuts. Yeah, but I don't really know how much you think you're saving by doing it. Well, you are. It is a big saving. It's also knowing what you're putting into your body. Like, even if they say, oh well, it's all natural pickle. Well, yeah, some of the chemical names of some of the preservatives they use in some of these things, I'm not sure I really want that in my system and in my body. But so anyways, what's going into it when you do it this way. All right, so now we set a timer for 5 minutes, and I'll be back in 5 minutes. All right, so our 5 minutes has passed, so that means it's phase B of step 2. We drain the water that we're scalding these things with, and it's as simple as they've cooled down enough now too as well that you can just sort of hold the jar, and you can get whatever you want to block passage. Sometimes your fingers are okay, sometimes it's a little hot, but you'll be just fine. And it's just as easy as that's that. All right, empty them out and be done with it. Right, I don't really think that this is one of those things that you want to save the water from. I suppose you could put it all into a bucket and let it cool and water your plants with it or whatever. But anyways, this is another step of it. I'll be back when I'm done at the next line, doing the brine, adding the spices and stuff that we want added, and then lastly the brine. All right. So we are now at the filling station. We are ready to go. I don't know if I'm going to have enough brine for this batch or to complete the whole thing, but it doesn't matter. We've only got so much room in the canners anyways. We can make more room. However, what we will be using for our own flavorings and spices, and it's like I said to you before, it doesn't matter what. You can use Chinese 5 spice or the Silk Road turkey blend, whatever you want. It doesn't matter. It's up to you. It's what you like. We'll be using plain peppercorns. Again, you can follow whatever recipe, and they say, oh, 3 or 4 if you like it spicy. No, we do better. Mustard seeds, 1 bay leaf in each pot, just because if we don't, like, probably hell will freeze over or something. And because we've only got this little handful of dill, we had critter problems, these caterpillars that would come and eat it. That's pretty much our entire harvest of dill. And so also with that, we'll be using dill seed. It's about 1/8 of a teaspoon per head, flower head that you use. That's what the equivalent is supposed to be. About. So it might be a little bit more if you really want to, or we want to. And then, of course, the big key thing is garlic. We like our pickles garlicky. So, and we had a phenomenal garlic year this year. Through our droughty conditions, they still got water. They wound up doing an awful lot better, just because garlic is more drought tolerant. Like it is more of an arid plant. So anyways, it did really, really well. We've got some pieces there that are big enough to choke an alligator with. So there's I'm taking the credit. Off camera, Isabel has been very patiently peeling and stripping all of the garlic for me to do this. All right, so give credit where credit is due. So again, we will start with the easy stuff that goes all the way to the bottom. I'll do 1 or maybe just 1 pot. There, you'll see. They say, again, most recipes will call for 3 or 4 peppercorns. We'll go with, I don't need the funnel for this, I'll need it later. We'll do like easy a teaspoon. Get them all over the floor too. That's always fun to pick up. Cat'll find them. Oh, and so because this one missed, we'll put a little extra in. So everybody gets 1 teaspoon, and it's going to be about the same with the mustard seed. The pepper just tastes so good. Like after they sit for a good long time, a couple of months, we'll say like November, they take up so much flavor. It's phenomenal. Like that, it's not so much the fire. You can get a little bit of fire from the pepper, but the taste, the actual taste of the peppercorn. And I think this came from our good friends at Costco. Yeah, Kirkland. You know. So there's the peppers done. About a teaspoon each. And we do the same thing with the mustard seeds. About a teaspoon each. Measuring with heart. And there. Again, it's not an exact measure. You do how the flavor you like. We know that this is how we like them. I'm not scooping any off. I put it in. What falls off with a gentle shake is what goes in, or rather after a gentle shake. Easy peasy. And don't worry, I will pick up all those peppercorns that went rolling all over the place on the floor in just a short bit. Okay. I'll put the lid on that. We don't need you anymore. And then we'll grab our dill. We'll take just a little bit. We're not going to be too cheap, so we'll put just a few sprigs in. And actually, we'll put this whole bunch in there. It can all go in. It all just adds flavor. Even some of the stuff that's gone a little dry can go in. Maybe not the stem so much, but whatever is leafy and holds those aromatics. There, everybody's in. Okay, and just so we can see the difference here, watch what we do. I'll complete one pot anyways. We'll put some of the, I'll start at this back end, that way I'll remember. A quarter of a teaspoon. It's rounded, you know, again, it's what you shake off. The rest stays in, just a simple tap. I'll do these 2 rows with this. I think I should have. If not, I'll come back. It doesn't matter. It's what you got, and you have to make do with what you got. Okay, so we'll deal with that. So that's how that works. And then the bay leaves, it's the same thing. Everybody just gets one. Again, I put all of the little stuff in first, just because I know that there's bulkier things to put in, and I don't want all of these, the mustard seeds and the peppercorns, just to sit on top and float there. So we'll do it this way. That's a big one. Okay, in, and in. That way everybody can sink to the bottom. Okay, so that's done. And now I'll do a little bit of garlic just for show and tell. And then we'll cut off camera and keep going. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be garlicky. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. As I said to you too before, when these things have been scalded, they become a little squishier, you know, so if you think there's not quite enough room, they soften up a little bit, so you are able to force big lumps in a little bit easier, you know, where they can slide down a little further to the bottom. 4 and 5. Anyways, so this is one of the ones that you can choke a crocodile with. Look at that thing. Whew. Anyway, I'll stop it there. I'll show you real quick the same thing for the brine. This is the step. The brine was simmering and boiling, and it's just to bring it up to that first line on the jar, or on the neck of the jar rather. And that's it. So from here, everything just goes into the canner. We'll set them in there for 15 minutes, and I'll be back to show the final product. Okay. All right, so here we've gotten everybody out of the canner. There was a grand total of 14 jars. There were 7 jars of the spears, or quarters, and there were 7 jars of just the plain whole big full pickles. I'm not going to touch them to pick them up to show you because I don't want to burn my hands. On a side note, or on another note, with these things as well, with the garlic, is that it is completely normal from time to time, or even all the time, it depends on the year, I guess, or of the garlic, but the garlic can turn blue, or like attain these bluish hues. All it is a chemical reaction between the acids, being the vinegar, and these sulfuric compounds that are in the garlic, and they react to one another, and it's some sort of form of oxidization, I would imagine. It's completely normal. It still tastes the same. It just looks a little different. So that's it. That's all. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. And there will be more. Bye.